We're now getting our first glimpse at just how much the Senate impeachment trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton costs taxpayers. We don't have the final total yet, but the early numbers are in the millions. It's already more than the proposed settlement that the AG's office worked out with the whistleblowers. House lawmakers refused to pay the settlement, choosing instead to investigate Paxton, which led to the impeachment trial. Now, news of the cost is bringing questions and criticism.
Millions of taxpayer dollars have been wasted on this impeachment.
Since the day the trial ended, Attorney General Ken Paxton and his supporters have called for an audit of all costs associated with the impeachment. While the audit is not complete, records we obtained are giving us an idea of the cost to the state, with figures for the House's outside counsel. Rusty Hardin worked the most. With 400 hours at his $500 per hour rate, he made about $200,000. And the money wasn't just for the 2 weeks of trial work the lawyers did here in this room, but also in the hours of labor on pretrial motions and briefings in the months leading up. Other costs include about $10,000 on notebooks and more than $36,000 on transcripts.
When you're on the spot in trial, you don't have time to say, Your Honor, can I look that up for a second? Thousands upon thousands of pages of copies, plus the binders that the copies go in.
Legal experts say these numbers are what you would expect for a trial of this significance.
For a trial of this size and with the kind of legal talent that they put behind it, that's not very surprising.
But the numbers are still drawing criticism. In a statement, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says the House spent taxpayer money like drunken sailors, noting the Senate spent roughly $435,000 total, but the Senate didn't have to pay for legal teams.
That's actually a more surprising number than a $3.3 or $3.4 million fees number. If you asked a typical trial judge in Texas how much money they spent preparing to try an important case, they'd say none.
We still don't know how much money Paxton's defense team got paid, but it wasn't public dollars.
We didn't get a dime from the state.
I reached out to Chairman Andrew Murr, who led the House impeachment. He sent a statement defending the cost. Murr said, quote, "The future of Texas's governance, rooted in trust and transparency, justifies this expenditure." This week, the lawsuit that prompted the impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton will be back in court. It's part of an ongoing fight by the whistleblowers, Paxton's former top aides who reported him to the FBI and were subsequently terminated. While the case was settled at the beginning of this year, the legislature did not approve the $3.3 million payout. That prompted the House to begin investigating Paxton. And on Wednesday, a Travis County judge will hear the whistleblower's request for a deposition, which, if granted, would compel Paxton to give sworn out-of-court testimony. A federal judge is contemplating whether to hold the state of Texas in contempt of court again over ongoing problems in the Texas foster care system. Judge Janice Jack could slap the state with a fine for not following some of her court-ordered reforms. It's the latest chapter in a lawsuit that's lasted for more than 12 years. Investigator Avery Travis listened in on the testimony and looks at what's next in this long legal battle.
Pictures show dirty, damaged, and disorganized rooms inside rentals in Temple, Killeen, and Belton, housing Texas foster children with some of the highest behavioral and medical needs. Pictures filed in a report ahead of a hearing in federal court, revealing dozens of children spent nights in these kinds of unregulated placements this year. But the grim picture painted by witness after witness in that hearing, using only their memories, gripped a Texas courtroom for 3 days. Hopeless former caseworkers remembered nights working harrowing overtime shifts, watching kids at these kinds of placements. And an 18-year-old girl offered tearful testimony about inappropriate advances from an adult staffer and other poor treatment during her 7 years in the system.
Very dangerous problem areas that remain even after all these years.
Paul Yetter, one of the lead attorneys who originally filed the lawsuit on behalf of thousands of children in the state's care, told the judge they've seen little improvement from the Texas agencies tasked with finding homes and investigating reports of abuse or neglect.
Leadership from the state agencies involved told the court that they've made improvements, lowering the number of children without placement, as well as prioritizing staffing issues that could potentially put pressure on the system. Now, the judge has held the state of Texas in contempt twice before during the course of this lawsuit, so all eyes are looking to her, waiting on any ruling.
Avery Travis for State of Texas.
We reached out to both the Department of Family and Protective Services and the Health and Human Services Commission for comment. They pointed us to the private attorneys now representing the state. Those attorneys have yet to respond to our requests. We told you a few weeks ago how attorneys for the children wanted the judge to put some parts of the foster care system under a court-appointed administrator. Attorneys now tell us that the judge indicated she would not grant that request. Thousands of Texans looking for help after the state wrongfully kicked them off Medicaid.
People are making really hard choices right now about what do they spend on Christmas gifts? Do they fix their car? How are they going to pay rent?
Why there's now some encouraging news about efforts to restore those lost benefits.